Okay, well, welcome back to another episode of Yada Yada Boom. My co-host Robert Behringer, as we sit down on an Easter Sunday morning.
It
I
is.
find
It
it
is, in fact.
interesting. We both have a very quiet house today, which is wonderful. All of our people have left us. Where neither one of us are sad about that. I don't think we just sometimes need to recharge,
Yes.
which is a wonderful way for us to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is being an extrovert or an introvert and what that kind of means. And then, of course, I have some thoughts. Robert and I, we don't precursor much of this as we want
No.
to kind of fly off the cuff and have a real discussion. So, hi.
Hi, Kate, and happy birthday to Kate. By the way, Kate had a birthday 2 days ago.
Thank
So
you, thank you. I am
I'm,
now apparently a year older.
yes, we won't
Or
say how old
something.
probably, but that's okay.
I'm so,
I think,
I'm
think you've said
celebrating
that.
an awesome birthday again. I don't
Yeah.
care how old I am. So I'm
Yeah.
47 now.
47.
For
That's
me,
right.
I think that's really, really, I'm
Level
young.
47. Level
Level
47.
47, baby, all the way. And I think I feel and look better than I ever have in my entire existence. So I am not sad. I'm
Yeah.
not sad at all. So,
Well, introvert versus extrovert. The amount of prep Kate and I did for this episode was typical. We said we're going to talk about, are we introverts or extroverts, and why does that matter? And what little we know about it, not being experts or clinicians or anything like that. I'll just try to be briefer than I usually am. I always thought of myself as an extrovert because I'm fairly comfortable in social situations. I don't like large crowds. I don't care about it so much. It doesn't stress me out or anything, but I don't really care for it. I don't like really loud, noisy places. But I've gone to many concerts and places and sporting events. I mean, those being, crushed in a line, I don't really care, but it's not something I seek out for sure. So as I've learned more about what being extroverted is, I think there's obviously, like anything else, you can't put us all into one bucket.
right.
But I'm pretty comfortable in social situations, and I'll take the lead in meetings and parties and gatherings if I feel it's needed. If it's dead or everybody's quiet, I'll usually try to get things going, but I'm also completely comfortable just sitting back and being a fly on the wall and observing people. But one thing that I found recently was I'm more introverted than I thought. I don't recharge by being around people. That's not where I go to
Mhm.
seek my energy. When I come back from a business trip, I don't, I don't go seek out, let's go to a party or a club or go out dancing. I seek out a bike ride by myself, or I seek out my computer, and I like to accomplish things. So that goes
Yeah.
back to something we've talked about a lot. But I'll also just like to lay down and kind of lightly meditate and relax and listen to music. So I think I'm a little of both.
I think that you are too. So, something that I've done like over the years, just trying to understand people. I'm in the people business, and I've always been a people person. I do love people. I love understanding them. I, by definition, like if we're looking at definition of extrovert, introvert, ambivert, like all of the different verbs, I do usually fall into more of an extrovert type of a role. But as I become more aware of what those type of characteristics are, how you really don't need to be put in a box, but being able to understand yourself is wonderful.
Yep.
That introspection, that level of consciousness. But then also in a business world, like I deal with more people, you deal with people. Understanding how others work so that you can come into a situation, I think in a business world is incredibly important. As your authentic self, but then being able to kind of pull off of what that other person is. So, yes, I think I'm an extrovert in many ways, but I also am introverted. So, like you just said, let's say I go to a conference and there are 50,000 people there. Okay, that's the big one, or 20,000, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people. I must get away. I must get away from the people,
Yeah.
or I will combust. I am on when I'm in front of the people. I'm like I vibe off of that energy. I'm very high energy. Like you said, I'm not going to be as animated as you. I can't help but talk
Right.
with my hands. I'm a very animated person. I expel a lot of energy when I'm around anyone. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
But then I have to have that time alone. I don't like to share rooms, at a conference. I want some quiet alone
Oh
time.
yeah. That's
Um,
yuck.
like I have to have downtime or I don't recharge. I feed off of other people's energy, which they say Extrovert, you fill your battery off of other people. Introvert, you expel your energy from your battery and you have to recharge all on your own. I am very introverted in that ways. I must have alone time to recharge because I'm too on around people.
Yeah, and I don't know many people who really seek out others and the chaos of crowds and
I
excitement
do.
to recharge.
I do. I
To
know people.
recharge?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I don't.
Yes,
Yeah.
they must be around other people to feel equilibrium inside of themselves.
Okay. I
Them in alone time do not get along,
yeah,
which is insane to me.
I think of I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my son fits into that box, but I think of my kids, my stepdaughters, others that I know well, and I just don't know many people that I'd I'd assume that that's where they fit. But I liked what you said earlier. Putting labels on things is only helpful if you're trying to either understand yourself or understand how to interact and best deal with other people. That's labeling people just to put them in a box and move on. And look, that's
Right.
what we have going on in this country. It's like a blood sport in politics. If you fit into the R or D label, then you're an enemy to many, many people. And there's so many nuances in everything
Right.
that I certainly wanted to mention that in this episode, that whether I'm introverted, extroverted, ambivert, I think is the combination of
Ambivert.
the
Yeah.
two somewhat. The one thing I have noticed as I think about things, because I am introverted in that I like to dive deep into my mind and my motivations and things like that. And the one thing that I've noticed is I actually derive a lot of energy from from I wouldn't say confrontation, although maybe it is, but certainly from feeling like I'm making a difference with some of the philosophical debates or posts that I'll put up. I get excited by the banter, the back and forth. I mean, when it's
Oh,
banter and when it's
interesting.
back and forth, not when it's a bunch of talking points coming at me. And I try my best to stay away from being a talking point person. But when there's legitimate back and forth, and that can be a debate on theology and religion and or lack thereof. Here we are on Easter Sunday, right? That can be all those things. These days, it tends to be, for me, I tend to find myself talking a lot about women's rights, equal rights, social justice issues, and trying to be a different voice than others are typically hearing on that side. But I get a lot of energy from that. I can be kind of like ready to go to bed, and then I'll jump on a thread on LinkedIn and suddenly I am energized. I'm ready to go. Let's get to this.
Interesting. I think that has more to do with things that interest you and spark different parts of your brain, maybe. Because I also will find if it is something that I am interested in or something that I really feel passionate about, hands down, that will energize me. It doesn't matter who, what, when, where, why, or
Right.
how. I am passionate to the core, and it just sparks those different parts of my brain where I'm just like, let's go, let's talk about this. It
Yep.
really gives me that type of energy. I don't know if I would consider that an introvert versus extrovert type of a thing. So, like, thinking about the two, because I've done lots of stuff in this little realm, trying just to understand people. So they say extroverts speak before they think. And then they can backtrack and they're just be like, oh, well, I didn't really mean to say that. Let me try again. Versus an introvert, which will think through all of the different, like, very analytical.
Right.
And so looking, okay, if I say this, how is this going to be received? How is this going to, looking through all those things before they speak.
Hmm.
I don't know if I believe that 100%. I believe that's levels of consciousness versus the
Yeah.
difference between the two. So when I hear that, when like people are talking about those two different tendencies, I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily a pocketed thing. I think it's a trait, and maybe it's something that is more environmental, what they've seen around them. I don't know. I think about.
Yeah.
See,
It's
I'm an
probably
introvert in that way, and I'm like, let me think about this. I
yeah,
don't
it's
know.
probably tangentially similar to what I was talking about in that I derive energy and enthusiasm from sometimes confrontational actions, the same thing applies to what you were just describing. I think a lot of us, we listen to reply, and I know I do that. And I wouldn't put it in the extroverted bucket. I'd say it's like you said, it's more conscious. Are you really
Yes.
trying to hear what the person said, or are you trying to think of the next clever thing you can add to the conversation?
Yes.
Which
Yeah. The art
which
of
is what
listening
I
is
keep
difficult.
telling myself when you and I talk. It's like, slow down, listen. But you got this great point that you need to share, and everybody's going to want to know this. This is a viral moment for the world here. One giant step for everyone. Well, they're usually not that revelational, but
It was funny though. That is definitely a tendency, and that is a learned behavior for sure. So the art of listening, it is an art. Being able to be in the moment and really looking that person in the eye and sitting in what are you saying and being present in that moment. It is one of the most difficult things that I have definitely taught myself over time. I try to teach that same exact type of thing to other coaches on my team because we are in the business of listening and really understanding where people are coming from. And so being able to be like, okay, but my brain is firing so quickly that there's all these things to say. So when we're talking, yes, I think of things to say. I'm
yeah,
like, be in the moment.
yeah,
Okay, you got to rein yourself back in because the conversation and being in the moment with that person is always going to transcend time. The things that need to be said will be said in that conversation. Now, mind you, when we're having a conversation, there's little points of things that you want,
right.
ticking those down on the side, which like you're doing right now. Like, let me tick that down on the side
Yep.
so that you don't forget, but you can still be present in the moment. So with my clients, when they're going through the things that have been going well or the things that they're, trying to work on, I might take some quick little notes to jot down, but I'm still in the moment listening to them. I don't know how we got on this when we're talking introvert, extrovert, but it's just a trait for that art of listening to be in the moment. And I am talking about brains.
Right.
I got a little ADD going on. I am all over the place. There's squirrels having a rave all
Well,
around me all the time.
so when
So,
you noticed me pick up the pad, it was first for artistic effect, if you will.
oh,
But
artistic.
part of the reason that I will try to hold that thought and interject it is because I tend to be forgetful. I think we all do, like
Oh yeah, me too.
that was going
What
to be
was I
amazing. And I
thinking?
forgot what it was. Okay. It'll come back to me. So that's part of it. And there's been a hyper focus on older men being forgetful. And I now am,
Oh,
like dirt under my fingernails. Every time I forget something, I'm like, oh my God, I'm one of them. I'm one of these old guys who forgets everything. So that's on my mind a lot. But what the prop that I brought it up for is I'm going to tie this back to business because we're going to post this up on LinkedIn
yes,
and
absolutely.
we want it to be tied somewhat to business. I remember way back when I was working, I won't say where because I don't want to implicate anybody in here. It's not a bad story, but nonetheless, uh, 20 plus years ago, I'll say, we had a lot of distributors, and I said we really need to understand them. I was new to the company. We really need to understand them. And the fellow that was working on my team, who had been with the company for many years, I said, here's the types of stuff we should know about all of our distributors. I should be able to ask you, and you should know. And you're not going to know if we have 800 distributors. You can't know them all that well. So we have to figure out which ones matter. And these are the types of questions we should be able to answer generally off the top of our head. Now, okay, do they have 5 people or 50 or 500? Okay, they have 60, not 50. Not
Right.
that granular,
Approximations.
but are they large? Are they medium? Are they big? Roughly, things like that. Are they privately held? Are they family held? Are they publicly held? So on and so forth. And I remember I had this list, and the gentleman who worked for me was an older gentleman. He had to be at least as old as I am now, which means he's, 1 foot in the grave, old.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember being in a meeting with him, and he sat down, put his notepad up on his knee. He says, so, he says to this person that we're meeting with, so how many people work for your company? What were your annual sales? What are your top 3 lines? I'm like, no, that's not the way we
Oh,
do it. We organically just have discussion. And as points come up, we'll write them down mentally or not, but we'll jot them down and we'll sneak in context, a question. And that's where I think the art of listening and listening to reply, or just to, and in his case, he just saw this as a task, not as a
Right.
value that I should know these answers. It was more my boss wants me to fill these boxes on this form.
Right.
And so that's why I thought it was fairly important. It probably had nothing to do with introversion and extroversion,
It
but
does, though. I think it does.
okay, I'm going to stop then. You tell
Okay.
me.
Well, I do believe that that could really go in because maybe the person that was asking those questions is very analytical, more introverted, having a hard time with small talk, gets a little bit put off by connecting with
Okay,
people.
good
So, like
point.
I always say, try to human at a higher level. When you can sit down and have the art of listening and you can have that back and forth with someone, that's where you truly can connect. There are people that really struggle with doing that, and they might fall into that introverted side way over here, that they're just like, oh, these are the things that I need to do. I don't know how to just have a conversation. I need to know these things about you because I'm very analytical and that's just the way I think. And that's how my synapse fires in my brain.
Right.
Versus there's that huge extrovert on the other side that can sit down and talk to anybody about anything at any time. Never a loss for words, always that little, and you're like, wow, that person's a lot. Like the person at the
Yeah.
grocery store that starts talking to you about, the vegetables. You're like, wow, thanks, friend. They're super extroverted. So I believe that in a business world, that person could be incredibly introverted and sees the analytical side of things. I need to know these things about you because I'm going to better serve you very methodically,
Right.
whatever, versus you coming at him saying, okay, that art of conversation, the art of listening. When you are in conversation with somebody in business, just getting to know them and then taking what you glean from that conversation and being able to add it in as a
Right.
personal flair and a true connection. Because in business, there's so much that does need to be methodical, analytical. It's just business. And then there's the other side of things where I would much rather do business with somebody that knows me, knows my company, understands where that's coming from, than somebody that's just like,
Right.
so I don't know if I'm wrong in like
Yeah.
hearing what you were trying to say there, but
Yeah. What yeah, I did take a few minutes just before we logged into this call and tried to pull up a couple websites to refresh my memory on introversion and extroversion. And I know for sure Mackenzie, Alma's oldest of her second group of kids, she's, I think Morgan too, they both consider themselves and exhibit very introverted traits. They absolutely need to be alone to recharge. They
yes.
really don't enjoy large social situations, or even what we probably consider smaller social situations. Um, and I would imagine it would be harder for them to go into a situation like I was describing and start engaging in,
Yes.
I wouldn't call it small talk, but engaging in a more discussional way of getting after some of the information rather than just fill in the blanks type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered that. I thought that was an interesting takeaway for me because I still see that today when I'm training people. It's kind of like this inherently needs to be part of what you just want to know about a company. You want to understand the company or the project you're working on. You just inherently want to know a lot about it, and you just kind of go with the flow and ask questions, and you'll start to fill in, you'll start to fill in all the pieces. It'll be like a jigsaw. It all comes together and you'll start to see it all coming together, and the pieces will more logically be placed together kind of effortlessly. So that's how I was thinking, how can I tie this into business? Because those that are going to take the time to listen to this are going to want to say, what can I get out of, what can I get from it out of that I can take back to my business or the way
Yeah.
I approach
Yeah.
business.
Well, they say too, like a lot of business leaders tend to be more extroverted just because you do have that people component kind of ingrained in you. And so when you're looking at these things, something that I've always tried to do, like I'm trying to understand myself so I can better, of course, understand people. Because if you can't lead yourself, well, you can't lead others. I firmly believe that that is true. Starting to understand the differences in people, the art of asking the questions. Are you more of an extrovert? Are you more of an introvert? How can I complement that person's personality so that we can come together and actually collaborate and be better? So in that business world, I think it's incredibly important to just understand the differences in people, and it doesn't make it good, bad. You shouldn't be one more than the other, but being able to just understand people, understand yourself. I truly believe when I look at the characteristics of each side, introvert, extrovert, I am what they call an ambivert. I don't know how to pronounce
Ambivert, I think. Yeah.
ambivert. There's a lot of verbs.
I'm going with that.
I'm going to go ambivert. We're going to call it what we want to call it because this is our show. So I truly believe over time that I have come straight down the middle because I can go into the social situations. I can make conversation. I can have very deep conversations with people. I'm also very analytical. I think about everything, sometimes to the nth degree. So that's something I'm working on, is the overthinking, because I come up with all of the different scenarios and I'm looking at it from all different directions. So I think I've done a decent job of bringing myself right to the middle, where it just is showing up as a personality trait
Right.
down the center. I don't think it's always been that way. I really don't. I think I don't know. You said you overthinking it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Okay.
I,
Okay. I'll stop
yeah.
you there then, since you're.
Okay, good. Yeah, because my brain starts to go and it's like,
Yeah.
bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
Well, I think that there's another takeaway in my business world, and it's similar to how I interact with family and others too, and that is being pretty comfortable speaking in front of people, in front of large groups, in a meeting with people that are more senior to me or, fancier degree, things like that. I've never been shy about that, but I have learned that my overexuberance, that my interruptions are sometimes sort of like man eruptions. Men are given the ability to interrupt, and will do that. And I'm trying to be very mindful when I'm in meetings to make sure that there's people that might not feel comfortable. I try to include them, and not only not interrupt them, but people on our customer service team, for instance, that I can sense they want to say something, but they just don't feel comfortable. And there's a couple big personalities in the room, me being one of them. So I try to zip that lip and observe what's going on around me and say, hey, X person, I sense that you were, you might have had something to say on that. And sometimes that backfires because it's like shrinking violet then.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also created something where I've told people before, and told you this before, I try to download all the information, all the knowledge I've gained over 36 years of doing what I do as basically a salesperson. I say to myself, if you have a reasonable intelligence and you have the knowledge I have, you'll make a similar decision. Of course, if you're ethical as well. But what I've learned is that my overexuberance, my ideas that I'm out there, oh, let me share this, we're going to get a brainstorm going. I start so many of those sometimes, or I start it with such passion that people just kind of sit back and say, okay, tell us what you want me to do. And I don't give them the space to say, this is my idea, right? I don't give them that space. Or, known for my OCD habits, people will say, well, I know that you're going to insist that the Excel spreadsheet be formatted a certain way. You're going to want this. And I'm better about now saying, just tell me what you have. And if I say, there's a small point, there's something that I would change, I say, you know what? It's nothing, I don't know who said this. It's kind of sick, really, but a baby's not going to die, right? That's not how I would have written it. It might not be, it might not be presented in the order I would present it. It might not have as much impact, but it's not going to be a deal breaker on the receiving end. So I just let things go that I never would let go before. And I would always think that I was helping people, enabling them to, lift them up to a better level of communication or a better way of presenting. And really, I just stunting their growth. Yes. Because then the worst thing happens is they try to mimic me. Like, what would he do? And you really can never try to mimic somebody. You can understand
you're
them.
all your old individual people. And so when you start to recognize your way is not the only way, and you have that open-minded, let me see this from all angles versus this is the only way. There are so many different ways to do certain things. Yes, there are some baseline things that here are some basics for probably in your business. Like these are the things that we follow. But as far as the specificity of this must be the Excel spreadsheet, just like this. For your brain, it's great. For theirs, they think a little bit differently, maybe not so great. So I think I like to call it fire hosing, where you have all the information and all the knowledge and the years of experience, and you just want to fire hose the people with all of that knowledge because they are going to be able to take it all, but they just get knocked over.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, maybe if I were to come in a different way, start to understand that person's personality traits, where do I see them? Of course, there's lots of different, tests that you can take to start to understand people. In leadership, you do it a lot just because it is your people. You are in front of the people. So learning those types of things, once again, I don't know how much of that is introvert, extrovert, where we started with this, but I think it's so incredibly important in the business world, just in the people world. If you're just looking to level yourself up as a better human, understanding that there's differences in people and it makes them beautiful.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the ones that you get along with most tends to be most like you. They really, really do. Or then when you are maybe in a close relationship, those opposites do attract because you balance each other out. So knowing that each of those, relationships is just so incredibly important. I think that's what I think. And so I'll be quiet about that now. But anyway.
I like that, I like that kind of, I'm sure we're close to a wrap up time, but I like that analogy about people complimenting each other, because I think in my relationship with Amma, there are some things where we are similar, and that's usually not good. We both will react. If we think one of us is giving the other attitude or tone, then it's not unusual for the other person to reflect it back. I forget what that's called, but we will generally reflect it right back because my perception is you're being snarky with me, therefore I'm going to be snarky right back to you.
Right.
But she's got a completely different spiritual journey than me. I follow sort of a Buddhist path. She's Christian, and she doesn't go to a church or anything like that, but she's got her own relationship with God and it's important to her, but we really don't talk a lot about them. And she'll let me lead quite a bit, but I try to let her lead when it's matters that are really important to her. And we do tend to complement each other pretty well.
Yeah, you do. Since I know you both. Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm. So it's good.
So I don't know if having a room full of or a house full of extroverts would be a great idea. I sometimes joke we've got, when we have people over, sometimes Mackenzie and Morgan and the two cats that are girls and Amma, and I call it a hormone war zone. So add my daughter to the mix and,
you're outnumbered.
Yeah, for sure.
That's when you go and you're like, I have to go biking now. Bye. Yeah. I've been to your homes like at different places. So like when Aqua was in town and I'm there and Amma's there and there's just a lot of very strong female presence.
Yeah.
You're like going for like a 50-mile bike ride, guys. I'm out.
Great excuse for me. I'll tell you, I wish I could be doing that now, but it's raining again. So seems like every time I connect with you, Kate, it's wet and cold here. Look at this. It's April. It's almost April and I'm in a thick sweater because it's like 52 degrees out there and pouring buckets at times.
I would feel badly, but once again, I live in Northern Illinois. So there's that. Anyway, well, I think this is a great place for us to stop. I hope that somebody learns something from us bantering back and forth, as there's a lot of yada and a lot of yada. And sometimes there might be a boon for somebody. Yep. So here is to being and humaning at one level higher.
Yep. And I'm going to be sharing with people what I've done this weekend, being all alone as a bachelor almost. I'm going to share some of the things I've done to try to make myself incrementally better.
Betcha. We'll see ya.
Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye now.